The event is about to start, so if you're standing up, grab you some quick refreshments and sit down so we can get started. Thank you.
If I can have everyone's attention, we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and appreciate you being here. This is our third and final debate for the House District 10 campaign. Sitting to my right is Ellzey County Republican Chairman Dan Davis. My name is Neil White. I'll be moderating the debate tonight. To explain the format of tonight's debate, we'll be asking a series of questions to each of the candidates. The candidates have drawn for speaking order. And each question, the first candidate to speak will get 3 minutes, and then the same question will be asked to the other 3 candidates who will have 2 minutes to respond. The following candidate, or the next question, the following candidate gets to speak first and receive 3 minutes, and so on and so on. The candidates do not know what questions are being asked. And they'll be hearing it for the first time tonight. And also, we're going to be taking questions from the audience as well. I would like to thank the 4 candidates who have volunteered to run tonight. One of these fine gentlemen will be our next state representative, and greatly appreciate all 4 of you tonight. And I know, thank you for sitting around the applause. And because this is our final debate, the election is next Tuesday, and we're going to go off grid here a little bit. I was hoping that each of you could speak for 2 minutes, just introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are that hasn't had a chance to meet you yet. And we just give everybody 2 minutes. Jake, why don't you go first? You still get to answer first question. So.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jake Ellzey. I am born and bred in Texas, grew up in Perryton, Texas, went to the Naval Academy when I was 18, served our country for the last 20 years, and God put us in this wonderful place in Midlothian about a year and a half ago with my wife and 2 beautiful young children. I'm very proud to be here. I've never passed up an opportunity to serve, so when this opportunity came up, I took it. And at the very least, the entire idea behind running is to make the eventual candidate as strong as possible for District 10, to make the people here proud. And if I'm not it, then hopefully this debate process, which I challenge everybody to, has made us better men, better candidates, and better able to serve down in Austin. So I don't take this responsibility lightly, and I'm proud to have all y'all here tonight, and I look forward to a good debate. Thank you.
I'm TJ Fabby, lifelong resident of Ellis County, grew up in Red Oak, live in Waxahachie now. Married with 2 children. I'll be celebrating my 10th wedding anniversary on March 20th of this month. This is my beautiful wife, Ashley, who's back there in the back of the room with my kids. And I'm a small business owner. I sell shipping containers to the public, and I also have a tree service company. And do a lot of the climbing myself. Spend a lot of today up in trees. And it keeps me in shape, and it keeps me young. Who didn't like climbing trees when they were a kid? But the reason why I'm running is because I believe we're losing our freedoms in this country. And my campaign has been based on 3 things: the restoration of life, liberty, and property to the people of Texas. I don't believe we have a right to our life. If you're an unborn person in the womb, you don't have a right to your life right now. And I think that makes us an uncivilized society. I want to change that. I believe we're losing a lot of our freedoms. I believe that the First Amendment has been infringed on. I believe the Second Amendment has been infringed on. I believe that the Fourth Amendment, and I could go on down the line and name several others that I believe have been infringed on in this country. And I'm sick and tired of it. I want my kids to live free. And I want all of you to be able to own your property, so I want to get rid of property taxes in Texas. Right now, you can't own your property. Try not paying your property taxes for a few months, and you'll see who owns your property. If you would, just consider me in this race. Thank you.
Good evening, folks, and thanks to the Ellis County Republican Party for hosting this event. Thanks to Neil White for moderating for us, and thanks to the Ellis County Republican women for providing the cookies and the fudge. And the fudge is really good, and I'm going to dibs on what's left. So don't take it. My name is Burge. I'm a resident here of Midlothian, been here for 22 years. I'm on the Midlothian ISD Board of Trustees, and am quite proud of the fact that Midlothian was selected a couple of weeks ago as one of the top 55 districts in the state when you compare student performance coupled with fiscal responsibility, how much it costs us to educate the students. I own a business down in Waxahachie, had that business for over 20 years, been a member of all the local chamber of commerces down there. I'm a small business, but proud that our business has been named one of the top 150 fastest growing IT firms in the nation each of the last 3 years. So we do a good job down there. We sell computers and switches is the big thing that we do. I am a proud Cherokee Indian, and I haven't mentioned that too much here, but I am a card-carrying Cherokee Indian. You flew up the Tahlequah to vote in the Cherokee Nation up there. The last vote I did was for Wilma Mankiller, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit, so I didn't go back. Got 3 daughters, got 2 great granddaughters, and grandparents, you can agree with me on this. Grandparents are so much better than kids were. I love the grandkids, love my little granddaughters. I would appreciate your consideration here. You're going to get to hear us answer probably 4 or 5 questions tonight. A lot of it we're going to agree on, and there's going to be some things that we disagree on. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come out here on a Friday night. What a gorgeous day we had today, and I hope we have a good time tonight. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Wray, and I'm glad to be here with you tonight, and I appreciate you coming out. I also want to thank the hosts and Neil and Dan for coordinating everything, and Mike White. He's done such a great job flashing the cards at us to let us know how much time is left over the course of these debates, and I appreciate that, Mike. I am a native of Ellis County. I grew up in Waxahachie. I attended public schools in Waxahachie, graduating in 1989. I then attended Texas A&M University, where I got a degree. After that, I attended the University of Texas Law School. I'm a board-certified estate planning and probate lawyer. I spend a great deal of my law practice on helping small businesses and families with real estate transactions and estate planning and probate. I also co-own Town Square Title Company, which has an office here in Midlothian, as well as in Waxahachie and in Red Oak. And I have a lot of experience in starting businesses and knowing what it's like to operate a business in today's regulatory environment. When I was growing up, I was involved in scouting, and we frequently went on scouting trips, and we would camp out. And one of the things that the leaders would tell us is, as we were leaving, they would say, boys, we're going to leave this place better than we found it. And that is a large part, if not the main reason, that I'm running for this job. I want to leave this place better than I found it. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that it was in bad shape. But I believe very strongly in giving back. I attend First United Methodist Church in Waxahachie. I'm married to Michelle. We've been married for 17 years, and I have 2 children, a 13-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. Very proud of them, and they mean the world to me, and I want to protect Texas for their future. Thank you.
First question tonight. In the last 2 debates in Ennis and Waxahachie, all 4 of you agreed that the state does not need more legislative raised the question here. Part of the job of being a lawmaker is you have oversight over the state agencies that do oversee the laws that the legislature passed when it comes to protecting the safety of citizens and the environment. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. And last week we talked about the explosion at the fertilizer plant in West, which was caused by human error. But investigations show that no agency from the state had inspected that plant in over 5 years. Had the state actually gone in and conducted inspections, that tragic accident likely could have happened. One of the issues that's going on currently in Midlothian has to deal with the using sludge from wastewater treatment plants on farmlands. It is legal. It's legislation that was passed by both the House and the Senate, signed into law. However, as part of the regulation that your body that you're seeking to be elected to pass, that sludge has to be treated. And according to T-Close, if that sludge is treated adequately, it has almost zero moisture content, it has no odor. Yet for the past 3 years, residents of Midlothian have been complaining because they can't enjoy their property because of the horrendous odor that's being caused by the sludge that's being dropped on farmland, which is legal. And according to T-Close, and I'm telling you this because we've investigated this, if it's being treated properly, there should be no odor. But yet we have abundance of proof that sludge that is filled with liquid, that is polluting highways and being dumped on farmlands here in Midlothian is not being inspected by T-Close. The question is, as a lawmaker, if you're elected, what are you going to do to ensure that the laws and regulations that have already been passed to protect the safety and environment of the citizens of Texas are being followed through and enforced? And the second part of that question is, how receptive are you going to be to concerns from constituents who call and say, please help us, we need help making sure that the laws are being followed the way that they are? And by the way, I left this out, but in our investigation at the newspaper, the last time that the contractor who's responsible for the sludge that's being dumped in Ellis County has been inspected by the state when the permit was taking place. So, Jake, you're up first.
That sounds like an easy one. Thanks, Neil. Always good to be number one. During my time in the Navy, as a commanding officer of fighter squadron, we had 12 F-18s worth $80 million apiece. Once a year, we got inspected to make sure that we were doing our maintenance procedures right. Make sure there wasn't any rust, the aircraft were operating correctly, and that the maintainers were taking care of those aircraft. We could count on it. It was clockwork. Every year, we knew exactly when that inspection was going to be. So if we're talking about something like a sewage sludge treatment plant, you don't have any excuse in the state of Texas. They get inspected once a year. Whatever the state sets at the legislature level is a proper time to be inspecting those plants, then it must be done. I know the conflict that you're talking about off of 875, and the proposal was to make it 3 miles away, which would be cost effective to the farmer. So there's a lot of issues at play for the fertilizer being cheaper if it's sludge, but it's got to be treated at the same time. So there's two sets of constituencies here that we're dealing with, and we're talking about farmers who need to use fertilizer on their land, and that is a very cost-effective way, and also the folks who live in the neighborhoods who can't go outside their homes. So a good response time, if that does occur, if the inspection has been made and suddenly we've got a bad batch of sludge, and folks, it's getting laid down, and folks are having a problem, you need a 911 number to call to get effective, quick response time to see if that sludge has been treated properly. So within a couple of days at most is something that I would strive for. And then, of course, that would be a good oversight. This is a nice small community. I'm sure we're going to hear about it if there's some problems with that kind of stuff going on. So as you talk about receptiveness, we got to know where to go. I live in this community, and I'm going to be extremely receptive to every party that's involved, and we're going to come to a common solution no matter what it is. But you're right, we do need to take care of all of our citizens and take the cost-benefit analysis into account for the fertilizer as well as the quality of life for the folks who live here. So I would strive to work very hard on that, but at a legislative level, ensure oversight once a year. If that's the timeline, it must be done. Thanks.
Well, let me first say on receptiveness, I will always have an open ear and an open door policy. I don't care who you are, what your issue is. I don't care if you come to me and say that you think that hot air balloons are dangerous and they should be banned. I'm going to listen to you, but I'm going to tell you they're not, and I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to do anything about it. But I will always listen to my constituents. I will always listen. As far as the sludge issue goes, it's not just the people of Midlothian, it's people in other areas of the county that are being affected by this and other areas of the state. I think that there are some solutions. Obviously, this is a property rights issue, not only the property rights of the farmers who are having the sludge dumped on their property, but the neighboring property owners. Their property rights are being violated because they can't enjoy their property. I've smelled the stuff. It's very disgusting. You do not want to be sitting at your dinner table and be smelling this stuff. It's not appetizing. Won't make you want to eat. It'll probably make you want to do the opposite of eat. But I think that there's some common sense solutions here. We need to start looking at diluting this stuff with some regular soil so that it doesn't have such an odor to it. We need to start looking at maybe burying the stuff in the ground so that it's not exposed to the air and the wind doesn't pick up the odor and carry it over to the other people's properties. But I don't think that right now the laws are being enforced, and they need to be enforced. And it's not just in this area, but in other areas where laws are not being enforced. And we need to start enforcing the laws, making sure that the laws on the books are enforced before we start thinking about passing new laws. Thank you.
Well, it occurred to me when TJ started out that we needed an open door and an open mind and an open nose policy. Midlothian was a dairy town, and was a dairy town for a long, long time. And when I first came here, we were playing volleyball at the church, and we got a little rain shower, and the wind shifted around from the south, and I was sitting there playing volleyball, and I was like, I walked over to the preacher, and I said, "Preacher, do you know what that is?" He said, "I do, but I can't tell you what it is." Because we were just north of one of the dairies here in town. When you use organics for fertilizer, when the organics get wet, they will emit a smell. Now, the idea that if they're treated properly and treated completely, there will be no smell is probably not entirely correct. Because if you were to kill all the organics, then they wouldn't work as a fertilizer, would they? So this is an issue that's going to have to be worked out. I believe that we have rules in place, but I also believe that science may be able to help us here and figure out a way to dampen this down, work it out to the benefit of our farmers that are utilizing this as fertilizer and our homeowners as our rural atmosphere transitions more to a semi-rural atmosphere. And as we get more housetops and people that maybe aren't as appreciative of some of the country smells that we grew up with. Thank you.
I think the sewer sludge is just an example, and I'm going to speak more broadly about the concept generally. And your state legislature meets for 140 days every odd numbered year. Obviously, your state representative is doing a lot on your behalf at that time, but the rest of the time, your state representative is doing what I would call casework. Answering the phone, seeing you in the grocery store, visiting with you at church, wherever it may be, and acting as your advocate, your source of information, and your window into state government. And that's what I will be. I will be a good window, a good advocate. I will be accessible. You can get me on the phone. You can email me. You can find me in the community. I will be here to help you address your needs with state government. If there is an existing law or regulation on the books and it's not being enforced, and you bring that to my attention, I will follow through and help you shine a bright light on that and figure out what is going on. It may be that we have competing interests, and you may be calling me wanting X done and somebody wants Y done, and I will help make sure that a conservative answer and solution is found. You're going to have issues with state agencies. They may be imposing fines. They may be seeking to regulate you in some way that you don't like. You can call me. We'll figure it out. I'll look into it. I'll be your advocate. I'll find out what's going on. You may have an issue such as the sewer sludge that you're having a problem with. I'll be there. You can call me. I'm here to serve you. I'm your public servant. That's my take on this situation.
During the last 2 debates, we've talked about a number of state issues and a couple of federal issues as well. But one of the areas that we haven't quite touched on yet has to do with actually serving Ellison and Hill County. And the question is, if elected, what are you going to try and do specifically to benefit Ellison Hill counties? And to put that kind of that question into a framework here, I believe it was Duke last week that made the comment. We were discussing education, and his response was, what works in Austin or Dallas may be devastating for schools in like Midlothian and Avalon. You can't put a one-size-fits-all on. And that got me to thinking about this question. Part of being a lawmaker in Austin is working to bring funding for transportation projects that we need, economic development. We all know that education is a top priority, and as we pointed out last week, it's a difficult question that doesn't have a one-size-fits-all answer. And there are a number of specific duties that the state legislature has that work specifically for constituents in District 10. If you would spend this question just talking about your job in working to solve issues in District 10 that are unique to District 10, whether it be funding, transportation, economic development, making sure that complex answers to like education aren't being, Ellis County schools aren't being lumped into a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter format. And TJ, you're up next.
I think we need to put a time limit on the questions. What I'm going to do to benefit the people of Ellis County and Henderson County, western Henderson County, everything west of Cedar Creek Lake, is I'm going to work to shrink the size of government. I'm going to work to get the government off of your backs. I'm going to work to increase your freedom, increase your property rights, get rid of your property taxes so that you can own your property. Unique to the district, I don't know if there is anything. I don't like the idea of trying to please. Whatever's good for Ellis County, whatever's good for Texas is going to be good for Ellis County. Whatever's good for Texas is going to be good for the people over in Henderson County. And I will fight against toll roads coming through District 10. I do not agree with the idea of toll roads. I think that whoever came up with this, it was a desperate attempt to solve the problem of government's mismanagement of our tax dollars. And I don't think it's a good solution. I don't think you should have to pay twice for the roads that we drive on. And so I will fight tooth and nail to keep toll roads out of Ellis County, out of District 10. I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that our local school districts can run their schools the way that they best see fit and not the way that Austin sees fit. I don't think anybody down in Austin knows better how to educate the kids here in Midlothian than the parents and teachers here in Midlothian. And so my number one goal, if I get elected, is to reduce the size of government, reduce the scope of government, increase your freedom, increase your property rights, and increase local control. Local control is better control because it's closer to home and it's easier for us as voters to maintain that control. Thank you.
TJ and I agreed on part of that. I don't know that we agreed completely on the methodology. I do agree that it's not our job to bring home the bacon. I think that's what's got us into a lot of the problem we're in. I think that as a representative, if you look up the definition of it, that it would be my job to go down there and to look at every piece of legislation and to say, does this fit within the laws of our land? Does it fit within the Constitution? Is it economically feasible? And does it benefit my citizens? And then every representative does exactly the same thing, and then you vote. And if we did that by definition, it would benefit Texas. The problem comes when I decide to trade my bridge over 7 points for another representative's bridge over a different lake. And we start meeting together at the Austin Club and deciding how we're going to trade off projects. What am I going to do for Ellis County? What am I going to do for Henderson County? There are some TxDOT projects on the books that are in place, and TxDOT's been dragging their foot on them. We got to get the funding appropriated the way it's supposed to be, the way TxDOT is supposed to have the money to do that. We got to work on that. I do agree on education. That's going to be the #1 thing. You're going to see it heat up after the primary because we are going to lose the lawsuit. The state is going to lose the lawsuit. Education funding is going to have to be addressed again. There is one law that I would like to carry. There's one bill that I would like to carry. It is unconscionable to me that a representative or a state senator gets retirement after 8 years on a job that pays $6,500 a year. They tied it to the judge's salary, and I would file a bill to separate it. We do not need retirement for going to Austin and serving you. Thank you.
I also agree that pork barrel projects and bringing home the pork is not the way to handle government spending and not the way to handle projects. I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. And if we can solve our transportation issues and solve TxDOT issues for the entire state of Texas, that's going to benefit House District 10. Here in House District 10, we are blessed to have a lot of transportation infrastructure. It affects our economy tremendously. We have Interstate 35E, Interstate 45, U.S. Highway 287, and U.S. Highway 67. We create a lot of jobs because of these highways. We have the Railport here in Midlothian with distribution centers. We have the Walgreens distribution center in Waxahachie. We have several distribution centers in Ennis. We now have the Triumph plant in Red Oak. All of these are very, very transportation dependent, and we need to solve our transportation issues in Texas so that we can continue to have adequate transportation here in House District 10 and keep our economy moving. The next thing that I would like to do for our district is to just generally support our way of life here. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I've always noticed from living here and has been highlighted for me on the campaign trail, is the educational choices we have here in Ellis County. I know we have a lot of people that choose homeschooling. Those folks would like to have access to vocational programs, to extracurricular activities. I would like to look into making that available for homeschoolers. Additionally, we have several excellent charter schools. I want to make sure those charter schools are supported, as well as for our traditional ISDs. I want to make sure they are on a level playing field with the other folks, with the charter schools and with the homeschools. So we have a lot of educational choice in Ellis County. I want to support that, and I want to support solving our transportation issues statewide, because that is a very important issue for House District 10.
I'm going to echo a little what John said about the roads. One of the core functions of the state government is to provide an efficient highway system, and we've got the four going through it: 45, 67, 287, and 35. And it's we have to hold TxDOT feet to the fire, make sure that they're taking care of the roads As this area grows, and it grows far faster than anybody expected, we got to ensure a good system of safe, free roads. Additionally, more specific to this area, the biggest employer in this town is teachers. I'd like to make sure that we keep teachers better paid, more teachers, fewer administrators, and preserve the TRS. So, and then after that, we've got Gerdau Steel with 930 employees. Well, everybody in the Good Idea Club wants to come in and tell Gerdau Steel how to run their business. Whether it be from Washington, D.C. or the TCEQ, those folks are trying to work very hard to make it very hard to make a buck and keep that industry going. The same with the two concrete plants. And between the concrete plants and the steel plants, we have 1,300 employees, and so we're talking about 5,000 individuals that probably depend on those jobs. So making sure that the Good Idea Club in Washington, D.C., the EPA, and the TCEQ are doing their jobs, but not more than their jobs. And finally, I continue to work for farmers' water rights, both on the surface and subsurface, to ensure that we have an adequate water supply, because that's another core function of the state government. And I think those are three things that we could do very well down in Austin. That's one thing. Those are the things that I'd strive to do.
One of the most popular questions during the last two debates has been border security. And while this is a federal issue, for those of you who hadn't attended the first two debates, we've had a fantastic discussion on that. So for our next question, I'm just going to let the candidates talk about what the state can do for border security and how it impacts the state of Texas. And Duke, you're up first.
Well, and this is one that the four of us are pretty close to agreement on. Illegal immigration costs Texas $2.1 billion every year. It costs us an increased education cost, increased health care costs, increased transportation and infrastructure costs, and then ancillary support services like police and fire. $2.1 billion. Now, the Democrats will tell us that the way to fix this problem is that we need to give these good folks amnesty. We need to give them a path to citizenship. I'm going to tell you that these folks don't really want amnesty. They don't really want a path to citizenship. 98% of them are simply hardworking Mexican nationals that came up here because we have jobs. And I used this analogy last week, and I'm going to use it again. It kind of dates me, but how many of you have heard of Willie Sutton, the really famous bank robber? And so the reporter asked him one time, they said, "Willie, why do you rob banks?" And he looked at it and said, "Well, that's where the money is." And that's why we have the illegal immigration problem. Now, Jake's going to talk a minute about narco-terrorists, and I agree with that also. What I'm going to say is that we have to first and foremost seal the border. We have to do it. Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst had a program and spent a fair amount of money on it, and we proved that we can seal the border. We can do it with our National Guard. We can do it electronically. We can do it with the resources we have, the technology we have. We can seal the border. And that's the first step in this problem. We have to seal the border. It's not our responsibility, but it's our problem. So we're going to do it, and we're going to send the federal government the bill for it. After we do that, we're going to develop an efficient, an economically sound guest worker program that allows legal, honest, hardworking Mexican nationals to come to our great state and do some jobs for us. Because, quite frankly, guys, we got a lot of jobs to do here in Texas. And if we snapped our fingers right now and every illegal was gone, tomorrow Texas would have a problem with construction, hospitality, roads, a lot of the things that we do. So we've got to understand that just shutting the border is not the answer. We have to shut the border and we have to follow through. And we have to make it work for Texas. Thank you.
I want to shut the border. That's That's the big thing I want to do. And I think we have the ability, I think that we have the ability in our modern era to do that. And I think that we can do it through two specific things. One is additional boots on the ground in the border area. And I think we look to cut wasteful spending in state government so that we can increase law enforcement along the border area. The next thing is, I think we can use technology and barriers to further seal the border. What I want to do, and one thing I've talked about at the prior debates, is I want to create a zone in which technology can be used, and that is the only area that this technology can be used, because I'm concerned about the government collecting data on law-abiding U.S. citizens. So I don't want this technology to be used all over the state, and I think there needs to be backup mechanisms to ensure that it's properly scrubbed so that the government is not collecting data on you, law-abiding citizens. So I would propose a zone, an 8 to 10 mile zone that's up for debate within the border region, that we can use technology, we can use barriers, we can put additional boots on the ground, and we can secure the border. I've got a couple of other thoughts. One is that under Article 4 of the Constitution, just like Duke mentioned, the federal government has a duty to protect us from invasion, so I think we can send the bill for all of this work to the federal government to recover our money. We're sending a lot of money to the federal government that they are distributing to other states in the form of Medicaid funds, and we need to get our money back. And they need to defend our border, and we need to sue them to get that money back. Additionally, I believe that we can emphasize taxing mechanisms by shifting away from existing property tax to more of a consumption tax, because everyone in the state of Texas that's consuming goods or services pays a sales tax or consumption tax, whether they're in the country illegally or not. So that would help us recover some tax revenue from these folks that are not in our country legally. I would support that. Folks that are entering our country and that are committing crimes, we don't need to round them up and put them on a bus and send them back to Mexico. We need to put them in prison. And I would support that as well. And lastly, my time's up. I'll stop.
Securing the border. It's dead. Securing the border is a complex problem with simple solutions, but it's going to take some time and effort. There's what I've talked about in the past is strategic fencing. So you use strategic fencing where we know they're not going through. Use boots on the ground. Some folks have advocated using the Texas Guard. Well, that's a temporary solution, and it's a Title 32 issue because they're not law enforcement. So while I believe that there should be boots on the ground, I don't believe it's the Texas Guard's job because they're not law enforcement. They're temporary, and they're going to go back to their everyday jobs. I think the state should fund for an additional at least 500 state troopers that are law enforcement, that are trained in this, that are going to be consistently down there, and we allow them to do their jobs. The Texas State Guard has gone down and done some work down there with 250 or so, and they've stopped over 46,000 in the past. So it does work, but it needs to be full-time. Additionally, we use technology on the ground and in the air. The DPS has 6 aircraft that have sensors on them that can fly at about 15,000 feet and patrol the air. I think we should get some of the Air Force MC-12s, which are King Airs, which are specially configured with sensors on them, which is something I know a little bit about and have done quite frequently. And they're going to the boneyard in Arizona. We can get a hold of those for pennies on the dollar, double our Air Force down here in Texas, make sure they patrol only the border, because privacy rights are very important to me as well. But you train those guys up. They've been doing it in Afghanistan right now. They're perfect for the job. Through air support, talking to the guys on the ground, we can follow these bad guys everywhere. And as long as we got the permission of the folks who own the land on the ground, then we'll get this thing done and we'll get it shut down. So, this is about border security. All the other immigration issues, that's a separate topic. But we do have to shut down the border. Nothing else happens until then. Thanks.
I think we need to employ the Texas State Guard, DPS troopers, and volunteer Minutemen who are already working to secure the border. They just need to have their hands untied a little bit. And I wouldn't mind putting Jake in charge of all of them. I think he'd do a great job. Seriously, we need to turn off the magnets that are drawing these people in. They're coming over here, their kids are getting free education. They go into any emergency room and get free medical care. And it's magnets. They're drawn over here because nobody's going to do anything about them. And we've got to turn off the magnets. I'd like to see a law passed to end the, it would be a repeal of a law that gives college tuition to illegal immigrants. I think we need to repeal that law. And I think we need to think very seriously about how we educate the children of illegal immigrants in this country. Just providing a free education is not working. They come over here and their kids, there's a term for it, it's called anchor babies. And they come over here and they get free education, and it's not right. How do we fix that? Go from property tax to a consumption tax, just like John said, just like I've been screaming for years. We make them actually pay for their kids' education. And then their kids aren't getting the free education anymore, and the tax burden for their education is no longer solely on the backs of property owners. It's actually being carried by everybody. And so first and foremost, we've got to shut down the border. We've got to. We can't keep waiting on the federal government. We've given them time after time under a Republican and Democrat leadership, and they haven't done it. It's time for the state of Texas to do it.
We all know that Texas has an ongoing problem with funding public education. If elected, what are your views on public education and possible solutions, and how will you address this issue when it comes up before the legislature next year? John, you're up first.
Thank you. I want to tell you first that I don't think, I've been in running businesses and in serving in city government. The knee-jerk reaction anytime there's an issue, anytime we're having trouble getting our job done, the knee-jerk reaction is let's spend more money on it, or let's hire more people. I don't think that that's the right answer. I mean, it may be that we need to spend more money per pupil, per student, but I want to approach it conservatively. A couple things I'd like to do are to shift more local control and to get rid of mandates. I think that a lot of mandates that the state is putting on our education system are requiring our school districts to hire a lot of administrators to keep up with those mandates. And that we now have this one-to-one ratio of administrators and teachers. There's one administrator for every in-classroom teacher. So I think we need to reduce the mandates so that we can reduce the amount of money that we're spending on administration. I think that's very, very important. Additionally, as many of you know, there is the lawsuit that is working its way up to the Supreme Court. There are 4.8 million school students in the state of Texas. That lawsuit resulted from a funding cut during the 2011 legislative session where public education spending was cut by $5.4 billion. In the 2013 session, $3.4 billion of that was restored. The trial judge who heard the case, kind of made an off-the-cuff remark at one point when he issued his ruling that perhaps we need to spend up to $2,000 more per student, which would be $9.6 billion more dollars. So there's a lot of numbers floating around out there. Ultimately, the court system is going to put some type of instruction on the legislature as to what the court system is going to require the legislature to fund, and the legislature will have to come up with a conservative solution to that funding issue. That's what we have to do from a legal perspective. But what we need to do, we also need to do the right thing. And we need to support public education in the state of Texas to keep our economy growing. For altruistic reasons, somebody taught us we need to teach those behind us. And it's also the way we maintain a free government, is to have educated people. So we need to do what's right to keep public education moving in the state of Texas. I'll do that. I'll look for a conservative solution to make sure that we fund education at the proper level. If that needs to be more money per student, after I've been convinced of that, and we have a proper conservative resource to meet that funding, we'll do it. Thank you.
School funding has grown at 1.4 times the rate of enrollment in the state of Texas. Why is that? It's administrative costs and it's administrators. We need to stop that right now. We need to do a hiring freeze on all administrators right now. Additionally, growth of the state budget has also grown a lot faster than inflation and the size of our population. Budget growth must stop, and stop at that rate as well, only to the rate of inflation and population growth, because it's growing a lot faster than that, and that's part of the problem. So, that's part of the state debt. As far as local debt goes, I believe we should separate bonds that talk about athletic facilities versus school facilities, because they should be separate issues, not on the same bond. I also believe that when a bond is up for a vote, that there should be a higher threshold of voting participation, so that we know that enough people are voting in it, so that the folks, the few folks that vote aren't speaking for those that aren't. Now, that's a voter participation issue, which is very disturbing, but the fact is that not enough people vote in bond issues, and thanks to Duke, they've done a very good job here in Midlothian, but I think statewide that local debt is a very, very big deal. Finally, I'm a proponent of choice. All options are on the table. I think it makes us all better. I think it makes the schools better. Without choice, we have some failing schools, but we need to give more kids more options. Because of choice, all options are on the table with that. And finally, we need to start paying for our schools without a property tax. If we limit our growth of the state budget to only the growth of population and inflation, then we can completely do away with the property tax. My proposal is that over the course of 6 years, we do away with the property tax and go to a consumption tax. We do it over 6 years so it doesn't do a shock to the system, and we maintain that steady funding stream which education requires. Thanks.
We need to be very careful about how we handle the switch from property taxes to consumption taxes. I'm very leery of the idea of making it a gradual switch, because I have this nightmare in my mind of us putting in place the consumption tax, and then all of a sudden we get a Spin King Tankers. I have this nightmare of us putting in place the consumption tax while the property tax is still in place, and then the next legislature decides they don't want to get rid of the property taxes. So I do not support the gradual switch. I would like to immediately go from a property tax to a consumption tax and not risk the people of Texas having another tax put upon their shoulders. I want to abolish the Texas Education Agency. I think that it's a waste of money. We have the State Board of Education. It's an elected board accountable to the people of Texas. The Texas Education Agency is an appointed board, not accountable to the people of Texas. There's no reason to have them. The State Board of Education can take over all the duties of the Texas Education Agency, and you can keep them accountable. And so right there, we're going to be saving a lot of money. I do agree that we do need to spend a lot less money on administration and more money on teachers, since teachers actually do the educating. I thought about bringing a brick with me and saying, that this doesn't educate kids. We spend so much money on things that don't matter in our education system. There's a huge stadium out by 287, right? I think you can probably see it from here. It's a waste of money, folks. It is a waste of money. I know there may be some huge football fans in this room, but we are putting too much emphasis on sports and extracurricular things and not enough on education. We've got to reprioritize in Texas and say what is more important, that our kids learn how to play football in a multi-million-dollar stadium, or that they receive a proper education. And so I want to take a real good look at that. Obviously, it's going to be left up to each school district, but I think the discussion needs to start in the State House. Thank you.
Every dollar that you spend on education, every dollar that a school district spends, I'll break it down for you. The one-to-one number that is being quoted and being tossed out there by a lot of groups is an accurate number under certain circumstances, but let me give you the actual breakdown. When your kid goes to school and we spend $1 on that kid, 62% of that dollar, 62 cents, goes into the classroom. Into the classroom for either a teacher or an instructional aide. 21 cents of that dollar go for facility maintenance, transportation, the bus drivers that got them there, keeping the buses safe and sound, food services, the men and women that fix the food, feed our kids, and make sure that they eat a healthy lunch. That's 21 cents out of the dollar. Let's talk about your administration. Your campus principals get 14 cents out of that dollar. Your central administration gets 2 cents out of the dollar. And the fancy football stadiums, the track stadiums, the baseball fields, the basketball gyms, they get 3 cents out of every dollar. That includes the bond. That does include the bond, yes, sir. In Midlothian, I mentioned the fact that we were selected one of the top 55 districts in the state based on the amount of money that we spend per student and student performance based on ACT, SAT, and the testing. I'm not a big fan of testing, but it's there. We did it after a $7.5 million tax cut from the state. It can be done. I'm not a big fan of throwing money at things. I agree with John on that. My objective is not going to be to throw more money at education. My objective is going to be to provide a well-rounded, proper education for our kids. We did a support group with the city, not with the school district. And we had a couple of hundred people in there, and we asked them, I'm going to tell this story. TJ got some extra time. It'll take me just a second. We had everybody get up, and we asked them to draw a picture on these walls right here of what they remember about high school. And out of 200 people, almost every single one of them drew a picture of choir, of band, of baseball. There is study after study after study after study that shows that extracurricular activities help our kids become well-rounded, productive citizens. Do some people spend too much money on it? Absolutely. But I'm telling you that it is part of the education of our kids. Thank you.
Texas is the fastest growing state in the nation with a thriving economy. As a lawmaker, what is your view on that, and what will you do to keep our economy thriving while balancing the needs that are caused by that growth? And Jake, you're up first.
Stay out of it as much as possible. The Good Idea Club in Austin doesn't drive the economy. It's pretty simple. Entrepreneurs and business people drive the economy. The only thing we're supposed to provide the roads to make sure that the trucks get there, the water so the people can drink it, and the education so they can teach their kids and make this state more of a magnet than it already is for the folks who want to come in here and work. So I think less is more. I'm not going down there to say here's how we're going to drive the economy, because we already know how it drives. We stay out of it. And I wish Washington, D.C. would learn that a little bit, but I have no desire to make new laws that make it tougher to make a buck here in the state of Texas. My idea would be to repeal some that make it hard enough as it is.
The best thing the government can do for a healthy economy is to get the hell out of the way. I don't agree that, I don't think that we as a legislature can do anything to help the economy, other than one thing, stand up to this federal government. Stand up to this federal government and get them off the backs of our business owners. Start nullifying unconstitutional laws and where they don't take effect in the state of Texas and they don't affect business owners. Nullify Obamacare and tell Washington, we don't care what you say, Texans are not gonna allow this tyranny on our people. And that's what it is, folks. The things that are coming out of Washington, D.C., it's tyranny. And we're being ruled over. They've got their grubby mitts in almost every aspect of our lives, from our housing to our transportation to our health care now, and we've got to stop it. The best thing that the Texas legislature can do to help the Texas economy is to tell Washington, D.C., no.
This is another one where we're in a lot of agreement. The Texas government, any government, is not in business to create jobs. Believe it or not, I'm in business to create jobs. That's what I do, and I've been successful at it. As Jake mentioned, government's responsibility is infrastructure, and safety, and education. I think they can do one heck of a better job at that, and they can do it with a whole lot less money. And I'm going to help them learn how to spend less money, because that's how I do it. When a government entity starts their budget, it's an interesting thing. They start out with a large bucket of money. That's the first thing they get. And it's their job to spend almost all of that bucket of money. That's how it works. And they always spend almost all of it, because at the end of the year they can turn around and say, we were under budget. When I get up every morning, I look at the books and I say, I have to make X number of dollars today in order to pay my people, in order to keep the lights on. My wife's working with me now, so it's actually a couple of X more dollars a day just to keep her happy. But that's how I do it. I start from the bottom and I go up. Government does not do that. What am I going to do to help our economy? I'm going to get government out of the way and recognize that it's small business and even big business that drive Texas. They are the economic engine for our state, and they've done a great job of it so far. Send me to Austin, and I'll help them do even a better job.
I think what we do is what we're already doing. It's called the Texas model, and it is smaller government, lower taxes, and fewer regulations. And that's the course we need to stay, and we need to improve it and back off of some of the regulations we have, make sure that the federal government doesn't dip into our economy and over-regulate it. I've got a couple of ideas on how we can keep the smaller government, lower taxes model. One has been mentioned in a few of these debates, which I support, and that's called zero-based budgeting. Every year, each government agency goes through a budget process, not every year, every other year during the biennium. They go through the budget process and they say, we spent $100 million last year, we therefore need to spend 110 during this next biennium because of inflation or growth or whatever, growth of the population. Zero-based budgeting is where you require that agency to start at zero each time, and to justify each dollar that they're going to spend during the next budget cycle. I think that's a great idea. I think that we need to implement that in the state of Texas. Another thing that I would support, which has been touched upon earlier, is a tax and expenditure limit. We already have a tax and expenditure limit, which limits the growth of the state budget to certain metrics, but that is not working. because the state budget has grown, tremendously outgrown population and the size of our economy over the last 20 years. We need to have a revised tax and expenditure limit. I think we need these things in place because even though we are Texans, and Texas is a great place because it has more Texans than any other place in the world. But the problem is we are not susceptible, ultimately we are still susceptible to politics, and I don't want to see these Washington D.C. games migrate down into Texas to where we have a huge state government and a huge state bureaucracy. Thank you.
During the previous two debates, we've had very exciting discussion on the way the state funds government. So my next question is, let's talk about state funding in terms of how do we generate that revenue, different taxes. We talked about property tax, consumption tax, sales tax. So it's in that vein. And please add your thoughts on should gaming be allowed to be part of that revenue stream. And TJ, you're up first.
I will not support legalized gambling in Texas especially not while Joe Strauss is Speaker of the Texas House. He stands to make too much money off of this. Obviously, I want to move away from property taxes. First and foremost, because it prohibits property ownership. And if you can't own your property, then you're not really free. So the question is, how do we replace the lost revenue from property taxes? And the answer is, in my opinion, consumption tax. Consumption tax is the most fair tax that there is. Poor people pay less because they consume less. Rich people pay more because they consume more. Everybody bears the burden, even illegal immigrants. You don't have the cost that's wrapped up in property taxes, like the cost of an appraisal district, the cost of the board that oversees the appraisal district, the cost of all the litigation when people dispute their appraisals. And so right off the bat, when you move from the property tax to the consumption tax, you're saving taxpayers a lot of money because it doesn't cost that much to administer and enforce a consumption tax. I think we need to stop the diversion of funds. Gas taxes, vehicle registration taxes should be paying for our transportation. They're not. We need to rededicate those funds and pass a law to stop the diversion of funds. We've got the same problem with the Texas Lottery. We were told that the Texas Lottery was going to go towards public education. It's not. So we need to rededicate those funds and, like I said, pass a law to stop the diversion of funds. There's a lot of waste going on in this state. The state government is sending $1 million to every county for feral hog eradication. It doesn't make any sense. We can come up with very common sense approaches to some of these things without spending taxpayer money. The rest stops between here and Austin, unnecessary. The private sector has built truck stops and gas stations every 5 to 10 minutes down I-35. We don't need the big fancy rest stops anymore. So we need to really look at what we're spending taxpayer money on, stop the waste, stop the diversions, and move from a property tax to a consumption tax.
From the very beginning, first time this question came up, my answer was straightforward, I thought, and that is that it's not necessarily the taxes that get us, it's the spending that gets us. If they have a large bucket of money, they will spend that bucket of money, and I don't care where it came from. We have to get the spending under control. I agree with TJ on diversion of funds. If you collect a tax for, gasoline tax for our roads, it needs to go to our roads. And however that money comes in and however it's dedicated, however it's pitched to the taxpayers, that's where that money needs to go. On the consumption tax, I will challenge one piece of it, and I've said before, I don't have an issue with doing away with property tax. I want to take care of spending. That's my big deal, is the spending. But, everybody's made the statement that it doesn't cost anything to collect the sales tax and to remit it. I'm telling you, once a year, I write a check for my property tax at my business. Once a month, I go through the calculations and figure out how much to every city, to every county, to every state, to every small district that was around that I collect. And it takes me quite a few hours to come up with this so that I can then send a check to Austin for about $20,000 a month. It does take me some time, but it does cost me to collect the sales tax. So it's not absolutely free. On the gaming issue, I was the one that brought it up last time, and I made the statement that I wouldn't mind looking at the possibility of resort gambling. Resort gambling would be a certain percentage, a limit on how much can be derived from the gaming floor, X number of rooms, you have to have a convention center, you have to have X number of restaurants, and we only allow them in large destination cities like Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, El Paso, and Galveston, which used to have legal gaming. I followed it up by saying that it aggravates me to no end that when I drive through Oklahoma, you would have to take a D9 cat to move all the Texas license plates out of the way of the casinos up there. And I think we ought to at least look at the possibility. Thank you.
I'll answer the issue on gaming first. I want to be your state representative. I want my votes as your state representative to reflect your values and the majority of you and what your values are. As I move around House District 10, you've told me you do not want casino gambling in Texas, and that's the way I will vote. I would not support casino gambling in Texas as a source of revenue. I'll also tell you it's a bit more complicated on casino gambling because when you start casino gambling, the next thing you have to do is create a bureaucracy to manage and regulate it. And that soaks up some of that new tax revenue that you get from gambling. And then some states have also experienced an increase in crime, so you have more crime, law enforcement dollars that you spend. And so there are some studies out there that suggest casino gambling revenue is at best a wash after you create the regulatory body to oversee it and deal with the additional law enforcement that you need. We generally raise most of our state revenue through the property tax, the franchise tax, and the sales tax. The franchise tax is in need of some reform. It's a tax on businesses. There's $1 million gross revenue exemption, meaning if you have a business that has $900,000 of gross revenue, you don't pay any margin tax at all. You may have $900,000 of gross revenue and an $800,000 profit, and you pay absolutely no margin tax. If you have a business that has $1,001,001 of gross revenue and $1 profit, you're going to pay that tax. You're going to pay a lot more tax than the business that had $800,000 in profit. So I think that's a goofy, weird tax, and we need to reform it, and we need to fix it. As I've mentioned earlier, I would support migration away from a property tax to a sales tax. The Texas Public Policy Foundation, which is a conservative think tank here in our state of Texas, says that doing so could create up to 330,000 jobs in the state of Texas and could increase personal incomes by 1.8 to 4.7%. Both of those increases would occur over a 5-year period. So I would certainly look into that. My time's up. I am a rule follower, so I'm going to stop talking.
Let's limit growth of the government so we don't need to raise so much money. Let's keep working with the Land Commission and the Railroad Commission to encourage more oil and gas exploration, because that's paying for a lot right now. The comptroller predicted $900 million in oil and gas tax revenue last year, but instead we got $2.7 billion off of that tax, which has already replenished the money that we're going to spend on Prop 6. That is good news, so we need to keep going with what works. Additionally, I agree that no diversion should occur anymore. We need a predictable funding stream for the core jobs of the state for providing infrastructure and education. When you don't have predictable funding streams, then you have lobbyists get involved. So all these agencies that we know we have to fund, like TxDOT, we know they say they need $4 billion. I'll take a look at that and see if they're really needed or not. But if we made $3.6 billion in new car sales taxes last year, plus the registration fee, plus the gas tax, you've paid for your roads. It's taken care of. They need that predictability every year, so they don't have to go begging for it every 2 years with a different makeup in the House and the Senate. So I think the diversions have got to stop. Additionally, we need to do away with the property tax. We've talked about it quite a bit, but it absolutely has to go. I don't care if when you're 65 that rate freezes. You're probably not working at 65. You're on a budget that you have to manage, and if you're having to pay $3,000 a year in property taxes, you can't afford that house anymore, and it's got to go. It needs to go over 6 years so we don't bump the system, but it can be done. So finally, the franchise tax reform, it has to go away. The law of unintended consequences reared its ugly head on that. We're going to make $6 billion. No, they didn't. They made 4.9, and it's an impediment to new business growth in Texas. You bring those businesses here, you've got more tax revenue, everybody's happy. You do away with the property tax, everybody can buy a home, and now we're not following 45th, now we're in the top 10 in the states in home ownership, and that's what everybody strives to do. Thanks.
Well, the moment all of you have been waiting for, my last question before we close. And that question is, why do you want to be a state representative, and what are your ultimate political goals in public service? And Duke, you're up first.
Ever since I've been a small child, I've been 110% kind of guy. People that knew me in Grand Prairie, people that know me here, know that when I get involved in something, I give it everything I've got. I've been on the Midlothian School Board for 13 years. Yes, there are problems in public education, but I don't believe that they're insurmountable problems. I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I believe in public service. I believe that we as a people are still smart enough that if we'll just get off our tails and get involved, that we can fix it. I honestly, truly believe that as a people, we are smart enough to do that. Why do I want to go to Austin? Because I think that I have something that Austin doesn't have a large supply of right now, and that's common sense. I am just an ordinary person. I am nothing special. But I do have a fair amount of common sense. I believe myself to have quite a bit of business savvy. And I believe that I have the capability of listening to two people who are diametrically opposed and helping us come to a consensus. And there's a difference between the word consensus and compromise. You can come to consensus without compromising. Why do I want to go to Austin? I'm 57 years old. I believe in service. I believe in the public servant attitude. And I think that I can do a good job. I know that I can represent you. I know that I can make you proud. That's why I want to go to Austin.
I'm going to answer the second part first. What is my ultimate political career goal? And my ultimate political career goal is to be your state representative and to represent your traditional family values and your conservative values and your conservative fiscal values down in Austin. I don't aspire to achieve another office. I don't aspire to achieve a House leadership position. Certainly if I can go down there and espouse our conservative values and that allows me to rise into a leadership position, I wouldn't turn it down. But I'm not going down there to compromise your values or my values for a House leadership position. I'm not wanting to go to Austin because I need 149 new friends in the Texas House of Representatives. So my goal is to be your state representative and to be your public servant. Why do I want to do this? The way I was raised, I was taken to church every time the doors were open. That was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday evening, and several times in between when special things arose. And I was taught that I should tithe and I should give back, and that I should be a steward of God's blessings. And I vividly remember the parable that Jesus used about the master who gave the talents to his servants, and the one buried it in the backyard, and the other one returned it 40-fold. And I want to serve in this position because God has blessed me. And I believe it's very important for me to return that blessing and to give back. Additionally, I had a very humble beginning in this life, which ties back into that blessing. And I have been able to succeed. And I have been able to better myself and to start a family and to start a business and attain an education because of this wonderful state that we live in and the opportunities that have been afforded to me by this state, by this Texas model that I referred to earlier, by this economy. I have a 10-year-old boy sitting right here in the audience, and I want to make sure that those opportunities continue to exist into the future for him and for your kids and your grandkids and my grandkids and all future Texans. That's why I want to do this. It's just that simple. Thank you.
To whom much is given, much is required. That's my philosophy on life. I've been serving our country since I was old enough to graduate from high school, and I've been doing so ever since. When an opportunity to serve comes up, I take it. And this opportunity kind of surprised a lot of people, but I felt that I have a voice, that I'd like to be heard. I have a history of teamwork. One thing that the military teaches you is that you may not like who you work with, and you may not like who you're taking orders from and who the leadership is. But if you have a role that you can play in order to make the mission accomplished, then you do it. You put your ego aside, you put your personality aside, because over there is the mission, and everything else goes out the window. Right now, the United States is at somewhat of a tipping point. Others would argue it's already past the tipping point. I would tend to agree, but I also believe our better days are ahead because I have faith in it. I also believe that Texas is the bright, shining city on the hill for the rest of the country, and that's why we are a direct threat to the designs that President Obama has on this state. So if I can work with good conservatives down in Austin, because you're 1 of 150, and you can form a good conservative consensus to keep this state strong, to keep it economically viable, to make it a great place to do business and raise our children, then I want to play a part in it. And it certainly isn't for the money, and it certainly isn't to be away from your family for a long time because I love them dearly. It's because service is in my heart. I have a humble ego. I realize that in order to get things done, you have to put your ego aside, and you have to work very, very hard in order to protect this gift that we have called Texas.
My ultimate political goal is to be as big a thorn in the side of the political establishment in Austin as I can be. That is my ultimate political goal. I've watched this race evolve from the beginning. I started off running against a 20-year incumbent, thinking that I was going to run again in 2014. And then all of a sudden he announces that he's not seeking re-election, and I've now got 3 more giants to run against. I feel like I don't belong on the stage because I've got 3 giants sitting next to me. And 3 very accomplished men that should be everyone in here should be very proud of the things that they've accomplished. The reason why I'm running is because I said it at the beginning. I believe we're losing our freedoms. I believe we're losing our country. We're losing our children's futures. And it's because of politicians that come in and they smile and they wink and they say, I'm fighting for you, fighting a good fight. But they don't. They're not fighting, because if they were, they'd be stopping what's going on. And I'm sick and tired of watching it happen. I kept saying somebody needs to do something about this. And nobody was doing anything, so I said, well, I guess I'll go do something about it. Try to. And so that's why I got into the race in 2012. I figured out that the federal government was a lost cause. We can't turn that ship around. And so the only way to stop it is for the states to assert our sovereignty. And we need lawmakers in Austin who are willing to do that. Willing and courageous enough to say, I don't care how much money you put in my face. I don't care what threats you make to me. I'm going to stand up for liberty and freedom. And I'm going to tell this federal government no. That's what I want to do if I go to Austin. I want to be a thorn in the side of the establishment, and I want to encourage other lawmakers to stand up and fight. Because if we don't fight, we're going to lose this country. We can sit here and talk about the education and the transportation and all these other issues, but the fact is we are losing this country, and we've got to fight, folks. We've got to fight, and that's what I'm going to do if I go down there. Thank you.
We have time for one audience question before we move to closing comments, and I'll read the question. Do you think the penalties are too stiff for possession of marijuana charges? And if so, do you think decriminalization is the first step to legalization? And John, you're first.
I want to be a good steward of your tax dollars. And I want to be a good steward of your tax dollars no matter what function the government is performing with those tax dollars, whether it's infrastructure, public safety, education, and criminal law enforcement. I think that we should study, and there are several conservative groups that are advocating studying the current criminal penalties for possession of small amounts of marijuana. I want to study that to make sure that we are being good stewards of your tax dollars. However, I do not in any way want to legalize marijuana in the state of Texas or promote a marijuana culture in our state. Did I answer the entire question?
I believe so.
Marijuana is a gateway drug and should not be legalized in Texas. Part one. Part two, I'm looking at working with good people everywhere I go, because I've never claimed to know all the answers, to have all the right suggestions, but I can guarantee you this, that when we're talking about marijuana, of course not, it shouldn't be a felony where you go off to prison for years, but I would be willing to look at better ways of treatment, drug prevention programs, as the governor has stated as well, that there are ways that we can handle penalties with marijuana better than sending a kid off to prison and starting a true life crime.
Well, I'm glad to hear that we don't all want to send kids to prison now. Okay, let's talk about prohibition. What did prohibition accomplish? It created a whole new class of criminal. Al Capone would have never existed if not for prohibition. There's people who like to drink. There's people who like to smoke marijuana. And for us to say that it's the government's job to regulate other people's behavior is us saying that we believe in big government. We believe in overbearing government. We believe in a government that can control people's lives, control people's actions, control people's choices, regardless of whether or not they are violating the rights of others. And so what I advocate for is the decriminalization of marijuana, because to take a kid and pop him with a bag of pot, I don't know how many people in this room have smoked pot in your lifetime, but if you would have been caught with it, it could have ruined your whole life. I smoked it in high school and in the college years, and if I'd have gotten popped with it, it could have ruined my life. And so I don't think that we should be locking these kids up and putting them in a place where they learn how to become real criminals. We need to take a really close look at this. We need to learn from our mistakes in the past. There's a reason why prohibition was passed and then it was repealed, because the country realized that they had made a mistake. And I look to two things whenever I look at issues. I look to the Bible and I look to the Constitution, to the writings of the founding fathers. And I can't find anywhere in either one where they say that we should make that this should be a crime to use marijuana. And so we need to look at it like the sickness that it is. It's an illness, and we need to treat it like an illness and stop locking people up and ruining lives and wasting tax dollars. We're wasting a lot of tax dollars locking folks up for marijuana.
I am a bit of a literalist. Always have been. I'm kind of argumentative. I mean, I am actually CDO, which is OCD, but it's alphabetical like it should be. Okay. A law makes something legal or illegal. You can hit me if I get this wrong. A law makes something legal or illegal. If you decriminalize something, you have changed it from the status of illegal to legal. I don't believe in decriminalizing marijuana in any amount. I do believe that our penalty structures are out of whack. That I will give you. There is a difference between driving 5 miles over the speed limit and driving 200 miles an hour. There are differences in the effect and how we respond to these kids that get caught with marijuana. I will not vote to decriminalize. I do not believe that's the path. I agree with Jake, it's a gateway drug. But I will look at adjusting the penalty phase of that so that it's more in line with helping us get these kids going in the right direction. Thank you.
Before we do closing comments, I first of all want to announce that all of the candidates are going to be available immediately following our formal program, so please come up, talk to them one-on-one, ask them questions. Take advantage of this opportunity to get to know them, learn all you can about them. And what we're going to do now is each candidate's going to have a few minutes to make closing statements. But before we do that, let's give a big round of applause for our candidates. Thank you. And by the way, the candidates paid for this venue tonight. So that's how much they want to get their name out and performing their platform. Jake, you're up first.
I'm gonna stand up now. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. My name is Jake Ellzey, and I've been serving our country since I was 18 years old. And I'd like to serve you down in Austin. For 25 years, I have literally been fighting for the Constitution of the United States, and I've been putting my life on the line for the last 25 years for the Constitution that we love. I've spent 5 years on an aircraft carrier at sea, and that was not fun. I've got 830 traps on an aircraft carrier and an F-18. I commanded a fighter squadron with $1 billion in aircraft and over 200 people. We deployed twice in 1 year to Afghanistan with 1,600 mile round trips. I brought all those people back, all those aircraft back, and we still protected the troops on the ground. In 2006, I served with SEAL Team 5 in Marcus and Morgan Luttrell, providing air support for them in Ramadi, Iraq, the worst place in the world, and none of them got hurt while I was supporting them with air support. The point is that I know how to lead, and I know how to get the mission accomplished, and I'd like to start a new mission down in Austin. So let me tell you what I believe. I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in the golden rule even in politics. I believe in God, family, and country in that order. I believe in protecting the lives of the unborn. I believe that you should own your property, and you should always own it, and nobody should ever be able to take it from you. I believe you should be able to arm yourself and protect those that you love. I believe people of faith should be able to pray anytime, anywhere they want to, and that includes school. I think the children of Texas should follow the lead of Midlothian and be able to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and to Texas every day and do it in English. I believe the farmers and ranchers own the water on top of the soil and below it. I believe that no matter what you say, marijuana should never be legal in the state of Texas. I believe your information is your information. The only way anybody should be able to get a hold of it is with a warrant that shows you at your front door. I believe I should be able to choose where I'm going to send my kids to school. I believe that folks who educate their kids at home should not be penalized when it's time to go to a state university here in Texas. I believe we need more educators, fewer administrators, and preserving the TRS, and I think we need to preserve a $10,000 college education as much as possible here in the state. I believe that no matter what anybody else says, our best days are ahead of us. Or 3? Oh, it is? Okay. Well, I guess I'm done. My name's Jake Ellzey. I'd be honored to serve in Hannah and Austin. Thanks for your time. Let's roll.
My name's TJ Fabby. We've pretty much covered everything tonight. I am a lifelong resident of Ellis County, grew up in Red Oak, live in Waxahachie now. The reason why I think that you should vote for me, I'm sure everybody in here has probably made up their minds who they're voting for. I know I've got some supporters here. I know my opponents have their supporters that are here. If you haven't made up your mind by now, you're kind of late to the game. But I'm just a regular guy. I'm an ordinary guy, nothing special about me, nothing to ever make me think that I'm better than you. And I'm tired of being ruled over. I don't want my kids to be ruled over. I want to live free. I want my kids to live free. I want to own my property. I think that the fact that we allow legal abortions in Texas makes us an uncivilized society. And I want to put an end to it, and I'll fight to put an end to it. I believe in state sovereignty. I believe in the 10th Amendment. I believe that the only way to assert that sovereignty is to tell the federal government no. And that means nullification. I know it's one of those words that kind of makes people wince a little bit, but Thomas Jefferson supported it, James Madison supported it, and as freedom-loving Americans, we should all support it. We need to tell the federal government no. And as far as I know, I'm the only candidate up here that supports nullification, that supports telling the federal government no. And that's really basically it. I want you to live free. If you want to live free, vote for me. Thanks.
I took a moment this afternoon and I went online and I thought, I want to look this up. And I actually looked up Merriam-Webster's definition of the word representative. And the one that I liked, the one that struck out to me was, it's typical of a particular group of people. Typical of a particular group of people. I grew up in Grand Prairie. I worked 15 years offshore in the oil field. I'm now a successful small businessman. I operate a store down in Waxahachie. I've been in Midlothian for 22 years with my wife, Dawn. I am just like you guys. I am one of you. I am typical. I've been a member of every one of the local chambers around here for over 15 years. I currently serve on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Ellis County, on the board of directors for the Midlothian Masonic Scholarship Foundation, on the board of directors for the Midlothian Police Association, on the board of directors for the Midlothian Economic Development Board. I am a joiner. I believe in giving back. I'm a founding member of the Midlothian Education Foundation. I am one of you. I am extremely typical of you. Now, I've got a lot of interest, and we've never talked about it much. We've never really had the opportunity, but I'm going to tell you a few of them. I play the piano and sing. I come home every night, and I'll sit and play 30 to 45 minutes at the piano. You're welcome to come over and visit. I'm a licensed paramedic. I taught paramedics for quite a few years. I'm a certified flight instructor, multi-engine, single-engine instrument landing. Never got the float certification. I carry a license from the Republic of Panama, which allows me to sail ocean-going vessels of any size. I like to fish, and I like to hunt. My wife and I carry Glocks, and we have long guns, and nobody's going to take our guns away from us. I am one of you guys. I am typical. I go to church here. I eat here. I play here. I host parties at my house. We have a party on 4th of July. We'll have 350 people in my backyard. Plus you guys, you are invited. It's a good party. I am one of you. I am typical of you. I entered this race because I was asked to. It's not the next step in a political career. I entered this race because, as I said earlier, I truly believe that we have within us the ability to turn this country around and keep Texas great. I ran this race because I believe that I have the common sense that Austin is severely lacking. I accepted no money from special interest groups in Austin. Every bit of my money came from my friends and my associates. I am one of you. I'm typical of you. I am representative of you, and I ask for your support on March 4th. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Wray. I want to commend Duke for the gutsy move of touting his pilot experience. But I have one small confession to make. When I introduced myself to you earlier, I pointed out my family, whom I'm very proud of, and I mentioned being married to my wife for 17 years. And immediately I thought, is it really 17 years? And I was afraid I got that number wrong. But I did the math after I stopped talking. And it really is 17 years. But I'll tell you, I don't have any pre-prepared speech for you tonight. I just want to speak to you from my heart. And if you've come to several of these debates or you've reviewed any of my materials, you know one of my themes is how I got my start in this life and in this world. And it was very humble. I had a humble beginning. And I'm proud of that. And it makes, it's had a huge impact on who I am. And it is why I'm running for this office. And it's why I feel like I can do the best job for you. Because if you want somebody to protect what you have, and you want somebody to protect the opportunities that exist in this great state, I think you want somebody that's walked the path and that continues to walk the path. And I am continuing to do that, and I know where I've been, and I know how to protect it for future generations of Texans. At the last debate, I kind of gave an analogy of climbing a rope ladder. And I use that analogy because I'm climbing that ladder just like you are, and I can tell you that every knot on that rope ladder below me has a little bit of the skin off my knuckles on it. And I remember that, and it's made an impression, and I'm not going to forget that when I get to Austin. I know that you, either for yourself or a loved one or a family member, want educational opportunities. I've been there, I've had that, I will protect that, and I know how to make that happen. I know that you, either on behalf of yourself or a loved one, want to be sure that we have a strong economy where you can find a job. That's been important to me. I've been there. I know how to protect that. I know that you want the ability to start a business and to be successful and not be burdened by overreaching taxes and unduly regulations. I've been there. I know that. I know how to protect it. I will make sure that continues to exist in this great state of Texas. Folks, I want to be your public servant. I want to answer the call. I want to answer the call in this election, and I want to literally answer your calls if I'm elected. Please give me the opportunity to serve you in Austin. Thank you.
Let's have another hand for our candidates. Please take the opportunity to visit with each of them. They're going to remain here for a while, so that they'll take your questions. They want to get to know you. Take this opportunity to get to know them. And if you haven't participated in early voting, please vote Tuesday. Thank you for coming.